Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Missouri Board of Pharmacy's webinar today. I'm Tom Glinsky, the Chief Inspector. With me today is Kim Grinston, our Executive Director. Today's topic is changes that we're going to make to the inspection process and some of the forms and some of the compliance tools that we have out there to assist in you preparing for an inspection. Before we get started on the webinar today, just go through some of the basic information about the webinar if you haven't been on one before. Everyone's in muted mode. If you have any kind of trouble listening over the web, you can call in by the numbers on the GoToWebinar screen and listen by telephone. We will be giving 1 hour of CE for today's program. In order to get CE, you must be logged in under GoToWebinar yourself. You cannot listen in just by the phone. You must be signed in into GoToWebinar. At the end of the program today, there will be a post survey with 5 questions that you need to answer. If you have trouble getting those at the end, you can email us or give instructions for that at the end. And you need to get your answers back in within 48 hours if you don't do it on the GoToWebinar screen. We are unable at this time to report our CE to the CPE monitor, so you will need to save your certificates for this program. We have handouts posted on the board's website. On our homepage where we announced the webinar, there's now a link for the handouts. We do make a recording of the webinar and we'll post it. It gets posted on YouTube. We will post it usually within 30 days. We put it out on an email alert once I post it. It also can be found under the publication resources section on our web page. You do not get CE for watching one of the recordings. We will take questions at the end of the program today, time permitting. If you'd like to submit us questions on your GoToWebinar toolbar, you can type in your questions and hit send, and we will receive them, and we will work on those at the end of the program. So we'll get started today. We have our objectives is to explain some of the changes that we'll be making to the board's inspection process, and then I'll go over some of the compliance tools that we have out there to help you assist in preparing for an inspection. We have the webinar broken down. Kim will give a background section today, and then I will talk about the changes and some of the compliance tools. We have some new inspectors I'll tell you about, and then we'll answer questions. So right now I will turn it over to Kim.
Thank you, Tom, and good afternoon, everyone. This is Kimberly Grinston, Executive Director for the Board of Pharmacy, and as always, we thank you for joining us for our Lunch with the Chief Inspector webinar series. I think the series has been very successful. We've received a lot of significant feedback from you, the licensees, telling us how the webinars have helped you. We are still open to topics. If there's a topic that you'd like to see or like to have covered, we invite you and welcome you. Email the board office and give us your suggestions because we want to make sure that we are addressing those things that are important to you. We have over 300 people, as of a few seconds ago, joining us on the webinar today. So we have a lot of people attending, and we thank you for joining us on what I believe is an important topic. Before we talked about the why of the changes that you'll hear in a few minutes, the what we changed, I'd like to talk to you about why we did some of the changes here in the board office. As you know, the board meets periodically. We will be meeting tomorrow, and one of the things that the board continues to do, along with the board office, is to review the board's and the office's policies, procedures, our processes, to make sure that we are adequately serving the citizens of Missouri and also the licensees of this state. So when we begin talking about the why, I'd like to start off with the board's mission, because this is really what drives everything that the board does, the mission of the board. Many of you have heard this before, but I think it's going to take on a different context as we talk about the inspection changes. The board's primary mission, of course, is to protect the public. That is the board's goal. This is a question that we get often in the board office, and we remind people, licensees, the public, media, that the board's mission is really to protect the public. And we do that by providing a responsible and accountable regulatory system. That is one of the things that is a hallmark of protecting the public. It's listed here as two separate items, but in reality, the second prong really helps us do the first prong. You can't protect the public if you do not have a responsible and accountable regulatory system. That's what the board's mission is. Let me tell you what that does not mean. Thank you, Tom. Yes, we're ready. What that does not mean. That doesn't mean that no one likes paperwork. And I know in your world, you have paperwork and more paperwork. There are a lot of agencies that you deal with, a lot of regulatory agencies, insurance companies, and paperwork has unfortunately just become a huge part of what you do on an everyday basis. The mission of the board is not to give you more paperwork. It's not to give our inspectors more paperwork, because that doesn't serve those two prongs that we saw just on our last slide. It doesn't protect the public, nor does it provide for a responsible and or accountable regulatory system. So I'd like you to keep this image in your mind as we go through some of the changes that you'll be seeing over the next year, if you haven't seen them already. So it means that during this year, what we did, actually the beginning of last year, I think, very early in 2015, we sat down and we began to look at some of our processes at the office level. And we started looking at our inspection process. And we looked at how we are doing things. We looked at some of your comments, read some of the feedback that we get on the inspection process. For those of you who don't know, we do have an inspection survey that is now up and running. It's an electronic anonymous survey. When you are inspected, your inspector will give you information on how to participate in the survey. We looked at some of the information that was coming in on the inspection process. And we looked at how we can tie what we do on the inspection side more closely to the mission of the board. And that means focusing the board's resources on the two things that we are supposed to be doing. Number one, protecting the public, and number two, providing a responsible and accountable regulatory system. And when I say the board's resources, this just doesn't mean financially. Also our human capital, our pharmacists on the field, our office staff. How can we focus our resources so that we are focusing on those two things? Next slide. So we look at some of the hallmarks of effective regulation. You all are regulated by several different industries, and I think there are things that make any regulatory agency effective. An effective regulation program has to have, I think, at a minimum, these 5 things. It has to be fair, it has to be consistent, it has to be open, it has to be flexible, and it also has to be targeted. You have to know what it is that you're regulating and how you want to regulate that field. And so we looked at the inspection process with these 5 prongs in mind. Is our process now fair, consistent, open, flexible, and sufficiently targeted so that we can go back and reach our mission? Next slide. Effective regulation focuses on good processes. There is a principle in business that good processes will equal good results, and I really do believe that if we have a strong inspection process, then our inspection results, our goal in the inspection process will be satisfied. The other thing we looked at is we looked at eliminating waste. We specifically sat back and asked the question, what are we doing and why are we doing it? And then after we asked those two questions, the third question was, how does it relate to what the board's mission is? Are we protecting the public? Does this inspection process or requirement provide a responsible and accountable regulatory system? I can tell you that in the vast majority of the questions that we asked, the answer was yes. Then there were some areas where we really had to sit back and really look at what we're doing, how we're doing what we're doing, to make sure we were not, I don't want to say wasting time, but that we were really utilizing our resources effectively. And when I say our resources, I mean, again, our pharmacist time, our compliance resources as we're out on the inspection field. We are always looking at continuous improvement. We are always looking at ways to improve our process and to better what we do to provide a more efficient inspection result. Next slide. Many of you probably have seen this if you've gone to a business seminar, a leadership seminar. Continuous improvement really is a business philosophy that is based on making small positive changes on a regular basis. You know, sometimes in regulation, as in business, there are times where broad, sweeping changes are necessary for the life of the business or for the life of the enterprise. However, I think when you have an entity like the Board of Pharmacy, small positive changes can really produce a positive result. And so you're not going to hear today any changes that are incredibly large or incredibly wide sweeping. Instead, you'll hear some small positive changes that we implemented, again, to make what we do more effective, to make sure that we are very sensitive. We heard comments from many of you or many of our licensees about the time it takes during an inspection, what inspectors are looking at, not knowing what compliance elements are out there. And so we talked with the board and with their approval came up with a few suggestions, a few changes that we think will enhance the board's regulatory functions in 2016. Some of you may have already seen the rollout of some of the new board inspection process. If you have, I'd love to hear feedback about that as we continue to look at what we do. But for those who haven't, as you get exposed to the new process, we're going to encourage you at the end of this webinar to look at the board's website, because a lot of information will be on the board's website again about what we do and the new inspection rollout. I'd like you to look at those resources and let us know if they are helpful. Next slide. Again, I want to remind you that the board's goal is not to bury you in paperwork or the inspectors. The board's goal, again, is to make sure we are effectively inspecting and that we have an inspection process that provides for an accountable and regulatory system. And having said that, I'm now going to turn it over to Tom. I probably will jump in as we go through the rest of the presentation. Tom.
Thanks, Kim. So I'm going to go through some of the changes we are starting with the inspection process. It's broken down into 3 categories: the timing of the inspection, document gathering during the inspection, and then the actual inspection report that we leave with the licensee. So starting with timing, we now have altered the timing to it's going to be a risk-based inspection schedule, and it means that we are going to inspect those that are a higher risk more often than we will other entities. And this is the schedule. It is a goal of sterile compounding pharmacies that will be class H and E, facilities that are on probation with the board, and facilities that have received a non-compliant inspection letter. Those will be on a 12-month inspection schedule. I will tell you that the third one there, many people don't know about this, but a couple years ago we started a program in which pharmacies that have constant, I won't say bad inspections, but multiple issues, repeat issues, multiple compliance notices, especially given two inspections in a row for the very same things, now get a letter from the board office asking them to develop an action plan on how they are going to get their pharmacy in compliance. And so those pharmacies, anybody receiving one of those letters will be on our 12-month schedule also. All other pharmacies will be on an 18-month schedule, and then drug distributors will be on a 24-month schedule. Again, these are goals. There's a lot of variation here on territories. Investigations do slow us down, but these are our goals that we're going to be shooting for over the next year. Actually, we started some of this last year with our sterile compounding pharmacies. We put them on a 1-year schedule starting last year. We don't always meet that, but our goal is to try to meet this new schedule that we have. Newly licensed pharmacies, they should get an inspection within the first 6 months after opening. That is something we're going to try better now to get out and do. So those that are just opening get an inspection within the first month. But again, all this is subject to variation based on the territory and the workload of the inspector.
I just want to add something here, Tom. Again, these are suggested goals. That doesn't mean that if your pharmacy is not in the first category, that we will only inspect your pharmacy every 18 months, because it may be sooner than that. It may be every year, depending on the inspector's schedule, or even depending on what we're seeing on the compliance side from the board level. So these are suggested goals, and you may be inspected more frequently or less frequently than what you see on this screen. Our goal, though, is to focus our resources on the areas in those pharmacies that create the biggest risks to the public, thus the sterile compounding pharmacy 12-month annual inspection schedule, and then ranking those based on, again, public risk, focusing our resources to make sure we are effectively inspecting.
The next process change we're going to make is on how we request documents during an inspection. When I ask inspectors what's the most time-consuming thing during it's gathering documents, waiting for someone in the pharmacy to find documents. It's also it's not only time-consuming for us, the inspectors, but it's your staff. You are taking time, you're busy, your pharmacies are busy, and you're taking a lot of time looking, searching for records that we're asking for that in some cases no one seems to know where they're at, or the person who knows where they're at is not present that day. So one of the things we decided was we would change the process on how we would ask for these documents during an inspection. And the first thing was we would come up with a form and officially give you a form at the start of the inspection telling you what we're asking you for, and then give you time to go find those. And how we will do this is, I'll show you the form in just a second, but we will, at the beginning of the inspection, after introductions and we get settled, and before we get truly started, we will come up to the person there in charge that day and give them a form and have check marks on it. These are the things that we need you to gather why we're here today. And then what the inspectors will do is we'll give you time to do that while we go look at things that do not need your assistance in. We will look at your inventory and we'll look at prescription records. Those are two things that take up a big bulk of our inspection. And we can do those without assistance from the staff. So we will work on those things to give your staff time to find the documents that we need to have. And so what we've done is we created it's called the inspection document request, and it's broken down into various different sections, and these are the most common records that we would ask for during an inspection. And so what we will do is we'll check the ones that apply to your pharmacy. At the same time, when we'll be asking you, do you do multi-med dispensing? And if you don't, then you won't need to worry about that. We'll scratch it off the list. So it will be a kind of a question answer on what do you do here. Based on your answers, we'll tell you what kind of records we need, and we'll check them off here and give you a list. Some of these apply to all pharmacies, but there's some sections on here that won't apply. Sterile compounding, automated filling systems, Class J, those are things that just certain pharmacies do. So we will give this document to the person in charge that day, ask them to start retrieving those records while we go work on something else. We are hoping this will be less stressful than us coming and asking you every 5 minutes, oh, I need this, I need this. We'll ask all up front in writing so you can work on the list. As Kim said, some of you have already seen this. We've been piloting some of this in some territories to see how it works. So far, the feedback has been good. People like this idea. The other thing is we have this posted on our website, so you know in advance of us getting there, you can go get this form off the website and be prepared. So that's the document that we're going to hand out at the beginning of the inspection and how we'll use it.
Can I note one thing on document requests? That your inspector may need to ask for other documents that are not on this list. This list, we try to highlight the major categories, but you could be asked for additional documents. We wanted to give a guide so that even before your inspector enters the pharmacy, you know what we're probably going to be looking for and should probably have directions for staff on where those documents are.
So these are just some tips I give to help be prepared for an inspection. You know we're coming. Now you kind of know the schedule we're coming on, so you can prepare in advance for our arrival. first one's having a contingency plan when the pharmacist in charge is there. That's really not worded right. It's for when the person who knows where the records are is not present. That is not always the pharmacist in charge, especially if you're doing a lot of different things at a pharmacy, especially at a sterile compounding pharmacy or just a compounding pharmacy. It may be someone else that actually is in charge of that department, and they would know where all the records are and stuff. Even though the PIC should know where everything is, sometimes maybe the PIC is not the one who knows where everything is. So when that person isn't there, do you have a plan on who can fill in and know where the records are? So you need others to be aware of these locations. You can use the form we have to help do that. Another common problem we have is people not knowing how to access their electronic records. Some examples are CSOS records, policies and procedures, and the pseudoephedrine database. These are all usually electronic things that we're going to ask for, but if you can't find them in your computer, then we can't do anything about that. We don't know how to access your computer and find these for you. For CSOS, I should have put here, it's the completed order forms that we want to see, the electronic ones. I don't need to see how you order something or orders you sent. We're looking for completed orders. Policies and procedures, our list that we just showed you lists the different ones. It lists all the different policies and procedures throughout there, so you know what's required. And then for those that are submitting to the pseudoephedrine database, we ask to pull that up so we can see past sales. And so we need someone who knows how to either access the NPLEX system, or if you're using your own software, how to access your own software to pull past sales history. Use the list that we just told you about proactively. Like I said, we now have it on our website. It's posted on the left side of the website. We have a header called Professional Information. It's a drop-down box, and if you go under Pharmacies, the list that comes up, it will be the second one on the list there. So you can print that off and use that. We are going to turn that list into a compliance tool that actually, it will be a form that lets you fill in where you have these things located. So that's something we're working on, and once we have that completed, we'll post it on our website and send it out via an email alert. So those are some tips. Again, it's just being prepared. I feel bad when I go to a very busy pharmacy and there's a floater there and they know where nothing is, but I have to keep asking them over and over where things are, and the answer is I don't know on the floater today. Somebody there needs to know. It doesn't always have to be the pharmacist. If you have floaters come in, your technicians are always there. Designate one of the technicians to be the official record finder and make sure they know where things are. So those are just some ideas to help you could probably prepare for an inspection. The next change we're making is to the inspection report that we actually leave with the licensee. If you were practicing back in the late 90s, you will recall prior to then we were using a checklist format. It was, I believe, 22 different line items, and we checked whether you were compliant or not. The board had decided that they would like to bring back the checklist, and so what we've done is we've created a new checklist. It's actually 5 pages long. It has 18 different sections in it with major bullets of what we would be checking for during each of those sections. This does not include everything. There will be other things we look for that aren't one of these bullets, but these are the major ones. We're going to go through it here in just a little bit, but you'll see there is not a sterile compounding section to the checklist set. We're still developing that, so we'll be adding that in the future to our inspection report. And just to tell you about electronic inspection, in 2015, all but 2 of the territories were using the electronic inspection program, where we bring a computer into the pharmacy, we go over the inspection report with you on our computer, and then we burn you a PDF copy and leave it to you on a CD. The other 2 territories, that would be Barb Woods and Frank Van Fleet's old territory, we're still using the paper ones. In 2016, they will be using the electronic ones, so everyone will be seeing our electronic inspection program. We've been doing that for 3 years now in the other 6 territories. So the new form looks like this. It's set up with up here just some basic information on the pharmacy itself and the inspection, and then it gets broken down into different sections. So this first one here is dealing with licenses and registration. It talks about licenses, technician lists, off-site storage, stuff like that. And then over on the right side, you will see Y, an N, or an NA over here. And this is how we will check it. A Y is good. It means you did what you were supposed to. And N means no, you were not compliant. NA means it doesn't apply to you. So in this example, NA, on this section, we check off-site storage. If you don't use off-site storage, then this doesn't apply to you. So the goal is to have all Ys and no Ns. And then if we do have an N, you're going to have an observation written down here, similar to what we wrote on the old observation form down in this section of what the observation that we checked no was. And so we'll just scroll through. Pharmacy operations has a section. And then pharmacist supervisions, policies and procedures. Some of them are very wide open. Policies and procedures covers all the policies and procedures that might be required. Drug inventory, receipt and distribution records, if you're doing repackaging, and then dispensing records. And then just dispensing is, most of these things are things we find while we're looking through prescription files. Counseling. We have a section for long-term care dispensing and multi-med dispensing. And again, if your pharmacy doesn't do those things, then we will be checking NA. So on this example, this pharmacy didn't do either one of those, so everything was checked NA. Controlled substances, we have those two different sections. Well, we have actually four. We have general controlled substance inventory, C2 ordering, and then if you're doing the pseudoephedrine over-the-counter cells, we have a section for that too. And then administration, we have two different sections, but if you're doing it by protocol or by prescription order, and then we have a non-sterile compounding section. Like I said, in the future, we'll have a sterile compounding section. It will be a longer section, so it's under development right now. And then down at the bottom, we have additional observations. These were things that maybe violations were found, but they really didn't fit into any of the categories listed above, and the inspector would just write it in down here as an additional one. And then comments is sometimes inspectors make comments unrelated to violations, but there would be a section for that. And so what we do at the end of the inspection is we will go over this online with you, show you the things that were checked no and the observations, and then we will burn this onto a CD and hand you the CD with a PDF on the CD. So that's what the new checklist looks like. It does not affect the other inspection reports that we use. We will still be issuing compliance notices as before, quality assurance reports, and then the observation report is the old format, basically just a blank page that we wrote our observations on. So we will, compliance notice for those have not seen one. It's a violation that the board would like to hear back from you on how did you fix it. So it's a separate form that you fill out, and in this section over here, you write how you fix the problem and you're going to prevent it from happening in the future, and you send that to the board. The quality assurance report is a form we leave when we find what looks to be a dispensing error. We're looking at a prescription that says Amoxil 250, but the prescription label says Amoxil 500. It appears there may be an error there, so we leave a form. We fill out the top half, and then the licensee, the pharmacist in charge, just answers some questions down in this section about the error itself and send that back to the board. And then the observation report, this was the standard form we were using. It just had places for observation and comments. We will still use this for initial inspection, change of loan owner, change of location inspections, and for drug distributors, we will still be using this for drug distributor inspections. These forms, we're starting to even convert some of these forms, like the quality assurance report. We hope to have that so that we can leave a copy of that electronically for you if we have to leave one. The compliance notice is already an electronic one, but we will be going to electronic drug quality assurance report. So everything should be being left with you on a CD, and we won't be leaving paper forms with you. So next I'm going to, Kim, do you have a question?
I do. Before we move away from the checklist, I really want you to use the checklist to your benefit, because one of the things that we've heard in the office is that licensees would like to know, what are we looking for when we walk into a pharmacy? Well, the general answer to that question is we're looking for compliance with applicable state and federal law. But that, I know that doesn't help you operationally and on the ground. The checklist will give you a good overview of the specific things that we're looking for. Use the checklist to do your own self-inspection if you'd like. Walk through the checklist with pharmacy staff so that they know where documents are, and or you make sure that you're in compliance with each requirement. Want to stress again that the inspectors will be looking for other things that may not be specifically listed on the sheet, and that may depend on what you do and what they see when they're on the ground in the pharmacy. But please really utilize this to your benefit. The inspection checklist will be on the board's website. We are working on getting that posted as soon as we can. Hopefully we'll have that up by the end of the month. Please print it, disseminate it so that everyone in the pharmacy knows what it is that we generally will be looking for.
And as Kim mentioned earlier about having an open process, I mean, we are telling you up front what we're looking for. We're giving you the forms we use, so it is an open process so you know when we come in what we're looking for, what records we will be asking for. So this is going to move now on to some of the compliance tools we have out there to help prepare. We talked about some of them already, but from fiscal year 2015, this was the breakdown of how inspections came out. 28% were no violation noted, 41% were violations noted, and then 31% actually got issued compliance notices. How did that change from 2014? No violations stayed the same. It was 28% both years. Actually, compliance notices went up a little this year. Fiscal year 2015 ended June of 2015 is the timeline for that. So some of the compliance tools we have out there, the pharmacy self-assessment form, it's basically you do your own self-inspection. It is a questionnaire of 107 questions. It's in sections, so some sections won't apply to some pharmacies and you can skip over it. But it's kind of like the checklist we just showed you. It allows you to go in and it gives you instructions on what to look for and what to where you can find if you're doing something wrong or need to see the regulation, it gives you that. Also, the new checklist that we leave inspection report lists citations. So if you do get a check mark of no, it tells you where to go look in the law to find out what the law actually said about that. The pharmacy self-assessment form is a way to get CE. Every calendar year, the pharmacist in charge, owners, and any corporate officers can get 2 hours of CE for completing one of these. I just sent out an email alert earlier this month reminding people that they could do the self-assessment again this year. So every calendar year, you're able to do that and get 2 hours of CE for doing this. The pharmacist administration checklist, that was a checklist that we developed to help people comply with the administration immunizations. It's a two-sided form. One side is if you're doing it by protocol. The other side is if you're doing it by medical prescription order. And again, it just has a little checkbox in each little section on does your protocol comply? Do your notifications comply? It gives you detail on what needs to be done to comply. The inspection guide is this is a handout that we actually give out on inspections, but we also post it on our website. And it's just kind of a hodgepodge of different documents, guidance that we hand out during inspections. Again, it's posted on our website if you'd like to see it. You don't have to wait for the inspection. We update it couple times during the year. Newsletters, we have quarterly newsletters that usually we have some kind of inspection tip in it that you can do, and then our email alerts. I think I have samples of all these I should have been showing you. That's the self-assessment form. Again, it's 107 questions. You just check whether you're doing it or not. You do not have to submit that to us to get CE. All you submit is the last page attesting that you did it. That's a picture of the administration checklist. That's the protocol side, and if you flip it over, there'll be a side for prescription order. That's what the inspection guide looks like. That's the cover page of it. It's probably a 8 to 10 page document, I believe. At the back, it has some sample forms like a technician list or a compound log if you're in need of a sample of what one of those would look like. Here's a newsletter inspection tip, and now that we went to a new format for the newsletter, we can insert photos. So now we like to now put a picture of what the problem was. So here's one of a photo of a reconstitution unit who was splattered with pink, looks like amoxicillin over there. So that's one way to get inspection tips. And then the email alerts, we use that for a variety of things. Here's an example of the House Bill 600 suspension list, but also sometimes I put inspection tips on the email alert. So if you're not signed up for email alerts, I highly recommend that you do sign up for those. Some other tools that we have out there, as Kim mentioned earlier, the board's website, we have all kinds of publications and resources on there. If you go and you find the publication resources section, you'll find under the professional information, that little drop down has it kind of divided by pharmacist, pharmacy, intern, but it takes you to pages related to that. But two of them specifically is the practice guide. That is our attempt to write the rule book in layman's terms to explain things to you. And then if you're, especially for new pharmacists in charge, we have an FAQ out there for what's the responsibilities of a pharmacist in charge. Future webinars, currently we're holding 4 a year, and we usually pick a topic that hopefully will help increase compliance. I also encourage, especially if you weren't there for the previous inspection and you're a new pharmacist in charge, is find the previous inspection report and go over and see what was non-compliant last time. I can guarantee you inspectors will be checking for that on the next inspection. So use old inspection reports to help you prepare for the next inspection. And inspectors are always a resource. You should always be able to call. It's probably better to email your inspector. They're out inspecting, so they're not around to answer their phones. But email them if you have questions about compliance issues. Or the board, you can send an email to the board office if you have questions too. But use your inspectors. You shouldn't feel like you can't ask your inspector a question. They will not come running out if you ask a general question to make sure you're doing it right. I won't guarantee they won't ever come running out. There have been people that report stuff to us that we could not wait. But don't feel that we're going to come running out if you ask a question and you say you were doing something wrong. We do have 2 new inspectors. Frank Van Fleet retired at the end of the year, and Elena Wolzak will be taking over his area. That's the mainly Kansas City area. So Frank was here with us for over 15 years. Some of you are very used to Frank, so now we have Elena who will be taking over that territory. And then we've hired a new 9th inspector. We have got funding approval to hire a 9th inspector last year, and we decided that we were going to hire someone with a sterile compounding background. That's what we posted and interviewed specifically for. And we hired Katie Bold, who was a hospital pharmacist. She will be assisting in all matters sterile compounding. She will have a small territory of St. Louis City and County, and she will be responsible for all the Class H and E pharmacies in that area. And then she's going to assist with inspections throughout the state off and on too. So if you're in the St. Louis area, you will see her on a routine basis. If you're in other parts of the state, at some time she will be coming along with your inspector or coming by herself to do a sterile compounding inspection. So we do have 2 new inspectors on staff. They are now have gone through training and are out there on their own now.
We've gotten to the point to ask questions. Tom, do you want to tell them how they can submit a question?
If you'd like to send us a question, go to your GoToWebinar toolbar, you type your question and just hit send, and we will get it here. We can't guarantee we will answer all questions, and we really we answer questions related to this webinar. Sometimes people send us ones that are not related to this topic. So time permitting, we'll try to get as many as we can.
As Tom's looking through the questions really quickly, I just want to again stress to please visit the board's website. A lot of the information that we've given out today, a lot of the resources are located on the board's website. We really do listen to comment and feedback. Many of you have given me suggested changes, revisions, additions to a lot of the materials that are out there, and we do incorporate those. If you have suggestions for the newsletter, something you'd like to see addressed, or even something you'd like to take to the board, please feel free to email the board office and let us know. I will tell you, as Tom begins to answer questions, we will be revising the pharmacy practice guide, hopefully by the end of this year. If there are suggestions, if you have any comments on the pharmacist practice guide, anything you'd like to see addressed, I can't promise that everything will get in there, but please let us know as we go through the revision process. We'd really like to know how we could better help you and provide more compliance resources and tools. Having said that, Tom.
Okay. Our first question has to do with administration notifications and qualifications, and they want to know, are we asking for that at the time of inspection? And I meant to say when I had the records thing up there, you will see some things on there that we've have asked for in the past not on there. As Kim talked about trying to be more efficient, we kind of scaled back and said, how critical is it for us to look at certain things? And there may be some documents that you noticed in the past we've asked for that are not on that. One example is the power of attorney forms for C2 ordering and CSAUS. You will not see that on the records document request form that we will give you. That doesn't mean that we may not ask for it if something came up, such as someone tells us they don't have power of attorney, then we're going to ask, well, who does? But the answer to the question is no. Individual notifications and the requirements are now handled through the audit that we do, so we no longer ask for them during the inspection unless there's an issue. There have been times inspectors have come across people who may not have the required certification or have notified the board with a notice of intent. Somehow we learned about that during the inspection, then we would ask to see those. But in general, that is not on the list anymore. We will not be asking to see certification, CE, CPR certificates, and that. The other thing is the notifications to the primary care provider and PCP, if they have one, and the protocol physician. That's not on the list either, but it doesn't mean that we may not ask to see them on some occasions, but you'll see it's no longer on the list. Someone's asking, is this CE valid for other states' requirements? I can't answer that. You have to ask the other state. Most states do seem to accept other state boards CE. We do, but it doesn't mean everybody does. So you would have to ask the state you're licensed in. Someone's asking, are these for resident pharmacies only? What about non-residents? At the current time, we do not routinely inspect non-resident pharmacies, so these would be for resident pharmacies. We do not have an active non-resident inspection program at this time. Will you post the inspection document? Yes, it is on our website. If you go to our home page, on the left side, you'll see a tab that says Professional Information. click that and there'll be a drop down and then choose pharmacies. And then on the center of the page, I believe it's the second document that shows up now. Someone's asking about CSAUS and what needs to be provided. If you're using CSAUS, the DEA says your records are all electronic. Someone's asking, can we print out a receipt and use that? Technically, if you're using CSAUS, your official record is your electronic record, which means, and this is why we go to the computer and we want to see, have you properly electronically checked in your order? So you can attach that, but that doesn't do away with the requirement that you also have it checked in, and we're going to go and look at the computer to see if it was checked in properly. Is it feasible to give stores 24 hours notice to gather paperwork? That has been discussed, and at this point the answer is the board is not going to do that, but it has been discussed. We are aware some states do that. It may be open for discussion. As we were saying, these changes we are doing. We're kind of going to go back in 6 months and take a look on, get some feedback from inspectors and licensees on what do you think. So once you start seeing this new thing, let us know. Let the inspector know, did it help, did it not help. If it causes more trouble, then we didn't solve any problem. And as Kim said, we try to make small changes and get some feedback and see if they work. But right now, we do not plan to go away from unannounced inspections.
And I will note that the board, we actually talked to the board about that, and the board still right now respects the value of a random inspection process. And so we don't do pre-advance notice. However, we have talked about ways to sort of screen paperwork before the inspector comes. And you may see some changes on that with the board's permission over the next year or so. Many of the documents that you have, especially in some of our chain pharmacies, are the same for the entire pharmacy, or we may be able to ask via mail or via email to see the paperwork before we actually physically appear at the pharmacy. A good example of that would be policies and procedures. We are entertaining that to see how we can cut down the document requests when we're on site, and again, focus our resources on those things that most directly impact public health.
Someone wants to know about sterile compounding. Is there going to be 2 separate inspections? And they're talking about St. Louis area. No, they're not. Katie will be your inspector who will come in and do a full routine inspection, which will be, and if you do sterile compounding, that will be one of the components of that. So no, the answer is it's one inspection. What might happen if you're not in St. Louis is Katie may be coming in with your normal inspector to assist in a sterile compounding inspection, but it will still be your standard routine inspection. It's possible, as we get Katie established, she may go out and just do sterile compounding inspections, but we have not determined that. And that's at this time that she'll be coming in with your routine inspector if you're not in the St. Louis area. Someone's asking about the timing of an initial inspection in the 6 months after opening. If you haven't gone through an initial inspection, what we come in, we're just looking at the physical building and security and equipment. We are not looking at any records, anything else. And so that will not change, but what we had in the past tried to get in sooner than a year, and we are now setting it at 6 months, that we would like to come in and do your first full inspection within 6 months. It gives you time to get up and running, and if something's going wrong, we kind of want to nip it in the bud, not wait 18 months to come in and tell you did something totally wrong from the start. So we've always had a goal of that. We're going to try to make it more of a goal going forward to get into newer places.
Someone asked if there will be a sterile compounding guidance document issued prior to doing or performing sterile compounding inspections. I can tell you we will be doing inspections on the schedule that you saw listed. We have a few resources on the board's website, but with our new sterile compounding inspector and with Tom's expertise, we do plan on issuing some additional sterile compounding guidance. One of the things that complicates that is that this board sterile compounding rule is under review. And so we'd hate to issue something that may change within months after actually issuing the document, but we will try to provide a few more compliance resources for sterile compounding.
Someone's asking about pseudoephedrine records, and it says if they're using the online database, which you're required to, you have to do the online database, is it necessary to maintain a physical notebook? The answer is no. The online database is the record. I believe if the system's down, you might have to keep a record, but I'm not that would be a BNDD question. I'd have to look that up on, do you have to go in and enter it once the system comes back up? I believe you do, but I think you have to keep it manually until you do that, but don't quote me on that. Someone's asking about Class B hospital pharmacies doing sterile compounding. Are they going to be on the same Class H and E sterile compounding? It will only be if you have H on your license. And just so everyone knows, E is nuclear, H is sterile compounding, E is nuclear. If you have a B and an H, yes, you will be on the one-year schedule. If you are just a B pharmacy, you would be and the only sterile you're doing is for your inpatient use, and you don't have H on your license with us, then you would be on the 18-month schedule.
And again, that schedule is a suggested goal deadline and can vary depending on just inspector territory needs.
I think they now clarified their question on the pseudoephedrine. They want to know about, do they have to, they were talking about the monthly PIC review. That's a BNDD requirement. I'm not sure if they mandate it be in paper or electronically, how you do it. You'd have to ask BNDD that question. Someone's asking about inspectors working with the FDA, and they said they understand we've performed inspections with the FDA. We have been requested to go along with the FDA on occasion. We were not conducting a Board of Pharmacy inspection. We were just there assisting with the FDA, and we were asked to go along by the FDA. So if pretty much you're aware the FDA is going in and inspecting pharmacies, it has pretty much been their standard that they let the Board of Pharmacy know and ask if you want to go along.
Someone asked if it was possible to have an appointment for an inspection because they are a one-person facility. And we actually talked about this question because we understand that there are facilities where the only pharmacist, or they may not be open on a regular schedule. I would suggest that you communicate with your inspector, let them know what your regularly scheduled hours, dates, and times are. And we, of course, cannot schedule an inspection, but they would be mindful of that when preparing to enter to do an inspection. And contact information, email addresses, phone numbers are on the board's website.
Someone's asking, how do you access the pseudoephedrine database? Well, the way an inspector, if you're doing NPLEX and you're submitting directly into NPLEX or you have access to NPLEX, I ask you to go to that website, log in, and then I can print a report or just pull it up on screen of what I want to see. If you're using a custom, your own, some of the larger organizations have their own software that links directly to the database. I do not know how to use your own. I have to ask you to pull up a sales history. But for those that have access to NPLEX, that's what we ask for, is pull up NPLEX and let us see what your sales history from that. I have a question about, will Katie always inspect hospitals in St. Louis? And then goes for sterile compound. Katie will only be doing hospitals that have H on their license. She will not be doing hospitals that do not have H on their license. So those that are just compounding sterile for their hospital patients, inpatient use, the answer is no. But if you're doing it on the outpatient basis, have H on your license with us, and you're in the St. Louis area, then yes, Katie will be your inspector.
I think we have just a few more questions in the last minute or two.
Someone's asking again, are we going to post the document request? It is posted. If you're having trouble finding it, again, it's on, actually the email that goes out in 4 days will have a link to it if you want to wait till then. The email that goes out with the answers to the survey will have, I put the link on there, but on our website, if you go to professional information, the tab on the left, and then drop down to pharmacies, click that, and then it will open up a list of documents, and it's, I believe, the second document on that list.
Just very quickly before we go, we have someone asking about the medication return rule and where the board is on that. It is on the board agenda for tomorrow in Columbia, Missouri. Please, if you can join us, that would be great. If not, please look at the board's website. We'll provide updates there.
Okay, well, we're about out of time here, so I think we're going to end the webinar. So I'll go over the CE instructions again. Our next webinar will be in April. The date hasn't been set yet. I will send it out on an email alert, so watch email alerts for the next webinar. To get CE today, at the end of the webinar, when I close the webinar, you will get a little window that pops up that says the webinar has ended. You're going to click close on that, and then a survey will open up on your screen. It will be 5 questions that you have to answer and submit. If you're using a smartphone or a tablet, we understand some people do not get the survey sometimes on those devices. If you don't get the survey, you can email us and ask for the questions, and we will email them to you, but you must get them back to us within 48 hours if you want to get credit. And if you want to send the email, you can send it to compliance@pr.mo.gov. And again, we do make a recording of this, and it takes about approximately 30 days for us to get it up and posted on YouTube. So, Kim, thank you for joining us today. I am now going to end the webinar.
Thank you, everyone.